Hey Ed, how are you?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm awesome, man. I'm excited for this podcast because not only we get to understand the mind of an entrepreneur, also an athlete as well, but we're going to dive into your incredible company, your fitness app, and mental performance app called Rewire. And I think a lot of my listeners are going to really going to dig the functionality and the value that you and your team have brought to life with this app. So I'm really excited to have you on my show.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, before we get into Rewire and your journey as an athlete, let's talk about one of my favorite topics in sports or in performance, and that's mental toughness.
Hmm.
So when you think about, and we hear this word a lot, right? We hear being mentally tough, mental toughness. So when you think about what mental toughness means to you, what comes to mind? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, I think if I was to sum it up, it's all about overcoming challenges, and that can manifest itself in a number of ways. So often in sport and in life, there's a lot of roadblocks, a lot of unexpected things thrown in your way, and just being able to sort of reset yourself and adapt around that and overcome those challenges, be resilient is really what it's all about to me.
Yeah. And I know, again, we'll get more into this about resiliency, mental toughness, and all the dynamics that make up mental performance. But just out of curiosity, and I don't really ask a lot of my guests this, but when we're talking about mental toughness, what do you think? Because they go hand in hand, but what do you think is more important? Being mentally tough or being resilient? Or are they the same?
Yeah, there's I would take the difference as really a more balanced approach. I think mental toughness often gets sort of lost in this realm of just beating your body up and beating your mind up as well. Um, one is more the outcome of the other, let's put it. But mental resilience, I think, takes a much more balanced approach, understanding that, we are human. We need time to recover. We need time to relax. Stress happens. So I like the term mental resilience as more of a, balanced approach to unlocking mental performance. So that's what it means to me, but I know a lot of people have sort of different approach, different analysis of that.
No, I love that because we won't go too deep on it, but a lot of times, at least from my perspective, people when they look at resiliency or being resilient, it's to withstand something, how to withstand it, come back in the moment, and I get it. But a lot of times, resilience is there's a front end, a middle, and an end or a back end, meaning we need to train ourselves to be resilient before that event happens. So
Hmm.
seeing it, feeling it, hearing it, and then when it comes to you, you're a little more prepared to withstand it. And then also, like you were saying, the recovery piece, being resilient, we have to do elite things on the back end so we can come back the next day and repeat and get prepared for that moment again. So resilience to me has three parts to it. But the one that I think we talk about a lot is, can we withstand? Can we come back in the moment? Can we handle heavy pressure situations?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the sort of the image I get when I think of mental resilience mental toughness is someone that's really just going hammer and nails, just crazy. And when I think about someone that's mentally resilient or displaying that, it's just comfortable, at one with their mind as such. And
Yeah.
that spans across a lot of different sort of avenues, but just having that control over your mind, and being at one with it is across, performance and relaxation and stress management and productivity, just every aspect of how we use our mind and be able to control your mindset in that's what really spans that's really what mental resiliency is for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, when you think about your athletic career, so you played a lot of rugby in your time. Also, now you're I call you a corporate athlete. Now you're an entrepreneur. And when you think about your life, when you think about all the times where you've had to perform, can you share like a moment where you had to be mentally tough, like that monumental moment where you had to dig in your heels and have mental strength and mental fortitude and resiliency?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so many to pick from. It's there's just so many times when the mental aspect plays just a huge role, whether it's just that one trigger of, a mantra to unlock a little bit more pace at the end of a game, or whether it's pushing through pain and to get to the next tackle or whatever it might be. But the biggest one for me, when I was around 13, really, starting to get into more of a performance mode around rugby. I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that was huge hit back. And I just remember those sort of first training session and first game, like trying to get in the right state to perform when your sugars are all over the place, and just trying to manage those in the moment was just hugely taxing mentally and physically. And being able to sort of overcome that, and it was a massive process as well, sort of learning all this. And this is an example where resilience spans across decades rather than 30 minutes or whatever it might be. So that's probably the biggest one that jumps to mind for me. But so many examples of just those moments where I've been able to just reset a little bit and push harder.
Well, you said this, like you were talking, this moment was when you're in your teenage years, correct?
Yeah.
So, and we live in a day and age right now where mental health, mental skills, mental performance is very focused on, which is a beautiful thing for both of us and for everyone else. But when you were growing up, because I know when I was playing American football and baseball and basketball and all the other sports, I didn't have anybody like me. I didn't have tools and resources like Rewire. So when you were going through your career in rugby, and even this moment when you were 13 years old, did you have somebody to help you? Did you have resources, or did you have to get through that moment with yourself and deal with yourself?
Yeah, I think at that moment it was really a battle with myself. As I got a bit later on, started to get coaches around with maybe not really specific psychology training, but that sort of understanding of it and ability to sort of really start to help you develop some strategies around that. So as I got later on, there started to be some strategies, some ways to reset, some ways to bring in some self-talk and aspects like that. And but I'd say really at that moment it was very much self-driven, looking at what's around, and also using that kind of, I think in many cases you can use challenges like that as some kind of fuel to the fire as well. Because if you're able to overcome that, it builds that resiliency that really helps you out in life as well. So I think at that moment it was for sure an internal battle.
Exactly. Well, when you think about your journey as a rugby player and now as an entrepreneur, look, we'll focus a little bit on the athletic side. If you were real quick just to look back at your mindset, your whole career, and it might have changed as you've developed as an athlete, how would you describe your mindset?
Challenge yourself or challenge myself, like in every, it's like I never think I can't do something, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Of course there's things I can't do right now, but I'm never of that mindset that, that's something I'll never be able to do. Like if you can envision something, I always think we're very adaptable, and obviously there are limits to this. I'm not going to break the 2-hour marathon barrier, but there are a lot of stuff that we can challenge ourselves to achieve. So yeah, that's what jumped to mind, and it's not something I've ever thought about, but as soon as you said that, that's what jumped to mind, is just challenging myself in everything I do.
Well, it sounds very, or it is very intrinsic. And is it fair to say that are you a big believer in manifestation? So manifesting whatever. So when I was playing rugby, or now that you're an entrepreneur, challenging yourself and trusting that you're, and I know there's limits, but still, like, when we're coming from possibility, there doesn't have to be limits.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, comes back to this kind of perception of how we see things. I wouldn't say I'm like a massive, like, I would say I manifest to an extent, but I'm not like, it's not sort of a cue I really come back to all the time. What I do have done is, and just find incredibly, centering, is sort of writing down and thinking through what I want to achieve, and setting some goals and building some goals around that. So
Yeah,
that's I remember, I have lots of notebooks, and in the front of quite a lot of them I've got, what I want to achieve. And then it's just a nice reminder when you open. So maybe in some senses that is manifesting it.
right. Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I do.
Well, and so, like, when you think about, like, I agree that is a form of, manifestation is more than just hearing ourselves say something or listening to ourselves saying something. I'm writing it down, being in action as well. So it's there's a lot of different kind of forms, the way that I look at it. When you think, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say one, I never, it's more like I want to be this, or I want to get to this, rather than like I am. And I think I'm always on that journey of like, I want to get here and want to build to that point. And I think, I really focus on that journey, and the process is a huge thing for me. So it's never like, I am awesome. It's never like that. It's just,
Right.
it's like, what do I want? And then, or what, what do I want to achieve? And how am I going to get there? And what is the process to that? I really try to focus on the process rather than the outcome. So that's a huge thing for me, is just focusing on that process. And that's one of the beautiful lessons I learned from sport, is focus on the process, and it helps across everything, just like being able to, really dial into what you need to do and focus on that. Nothing's, you get to what you want to achieve when you focus on how you're going to get there, rather than just the concept of being there. So that's really what I try to do. And tons of examples where I've had to go on that journey to get there. So like, one of the skills I really struggled with in rugby was line out throwing, and it's quite a technical thing, but it's, you want to hit the target. So you're like, I'm going to hit the target. But in reality, like, you don't just hit the target. You go through that whole process of like, loading the ball up behind your head, just to explain it at a really high level.
Yeah.
And, timing and listening to the calls, or making the calls, and then actually executing it. And the process there isn't just hitting the target, it's everything you've done to get to that. So I try to focus really, and I guess manifest the process rather than the outcome. So yeah, that's
Yeah. So I love that, because, and I don't want to derail this, because this is really important, especially for what we do for athletes, is the process to me is everything when it comes to your performance. Now, there's other dynamics that come into play that are very important, but you can get really easily distracted and out of focus when you're focusing on the outcome. So for me, when it comes to manifesting something, when you have committed to reps, the process, right? And you're mirroring or connecting language, so self-talk, to me, that's unstoppable. And when you do that and you're trusting yourself, that manifestation, you'll get the outcomes, you'll get the results, you'll be successful. And even if you're not getting the results, if you're actually connected to the process, listening to your self-talk, being fully present in the moment, to me, that's winning. That's in control for me. So, but it is interesting when you say like, I am awesome, I am a champion. Like that sounds forced, right? It doesn't seem like there, but if you say it enough times, 1,000, 1,500. Now I know like when you get reps, then you're hearing it, but you have to rep the shit out of it. You have to beat it up. Now, so it's when you were talking about putting your ball over your head and following certain like the process, what I think is important is if we're doing that, there's a couple different kinds of self-talk. There's that instructional self-talk, which you're talking about, put the ball over your head, follow through, hit the target, or there's that motivational self-talk.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I'm a champion, I'm awesome, I'm unbeatable. So, and the reason why I bring it up is because I think language is energy. We can actually connect language with energy. We're going to be moving in the right direction versus going the wrong direction with negative energy.
Yeah. My favorite self-talk, and obviously self-talk, really adapts around what you're trying to do. But my favorite for me is, when I'm on a long run or something like that, it's just calm and focused. And that's something that just really helps center me and keep me relaxed and keep me focused on what I'm trying to do on that process and on that journey. So that's one of the messages I really like. And then as you get later in the session, or it gets a bit tougher, it's like keep going, be strong is one of my favorites. Like so I really like to tie tie them back to the process and what I'm working on as well.
That's awesome. And I'll say this is because I'm a huge believer in language. And the mantra that I use, I've been using this for a long time. Usually it's when I speak in front of teams or large groups of people. I always do these three things. I get to do this. They want to hear me. Tap into your joy. I get to do this. They want to hear me. Tap into your joy. And I'll tell you what, I say that 10, 15 times. I'm not thinking about screwing up or if they're going to like me, if I'm going to sound weird. Like it's just something that really locks me in, and it's my language. It's the language that allows me to do that.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that. That makes a lot of sense. Gives you that level of reassurance as well, and helps you focus on what's most important. And
Exactly. So let's get into it. Well, I want to get into your incredible company and your app, but share with people your role. So you're the CPO, you're Chief Product Officer for Rewire. Just share with people a little bit about your role and then how you became the CPO.
Yeah, for sure. I have an awesome role. I really enjoy it. Every aspect of it. It's about, I've got a massive passion for sports science, for human performance, also for technology. And what I get to do is take the science and build products around that. One really interesting aspect when building sports tech or any tech really that's coming from science is sort of bridging that gap between science, what's in the research, and user experience, how people are actually going to use it. So bridging that gap is crucial to developing an actually a good product that people are going to use and enjoy, and most importantly get benefit from. So being able to work across different angles, work with the researchers, work with scientists, but then also keep in mind that sort of user-centric mindset, and build products around that. It's for sure been a journey. It's those kind of product management skills, a lot of it comes from empathy and sort of relating to the customer. So that's a huge part of what we do. We try and keep the customer in every bit of prioritization we do and features we build, and ultimately make sure it's working well for them. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we do, and the sort of journey there.
So when you talk about customer, and I know this because I've been on the app, and I know it can help all different kinds of performers out there. But there's a target audience that you're looking for. So what's the customer that you guys are targeting?
Yeah, and you kind of we're going after that really committed athlete, and that spans across a variety of different realms. For some, that's the time crunched athlete, this person that's balancing work and training and just trying to perform on all fronts. We've also built a product that's used by pro performers. We've got a ton of pro athletes using it, loving it, getting a lot of benefit from it. So we're really going after that driven athlete, and that doesn't necessarily matter about level they're at. It's really focused on just the drive they have and the will to improve. So yeah.
And it spans from triathlete to fencing to water polo, any sport.
Yeah. A lot of our market at the moment or user base at the moment comes from triathlon and cycling and running. Also got a lot of weightlifters and team sport athletes on the system. Definitely majority sort of endurance sports at the moment. I think that's potentially comes back to the nature of the sport being an individual sport, and that's been a key focus for now. We're also just developing a coaches platform, which we'll be releasing in Q4, which really relates to essentially gives coaches the tools to and data to really allow their athletes to allow them to help their athletes prepare their mind and body for performance. So that really does help us span more into those sort of team sport markets as well.
I love it. And this is a generalization, but when you think about why there's probably more people right now, individual sports or individual athletes that are using this, is because I believe that mindset is even more important, because it's just you, and you win by yourself and you lose. Now, I know there's a support team around these people, these athletes, but when you're in a team environment, it's there's energy that helps you. When you're winning, like, you celebrate it. When you're losing, there's nurturing, there's support there. Sometimes when you're that runner or you're that wrestler or that boxer or that fencer, you don't really have a team per se around you. So having tools like this can help an athlete strengthen their mental fitness.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's there's so many different ways that sort of is represented. I mean, they team sport athletes likewise are very driven, committed people, but not having something to, you are the result. Like you where you come in a triathlon is like, that's you. It's not like the accumulation of the team effort and everything like that. Like, that's you. So it becomes very performance focused. And that's the sort of key metric, that's a KPI in that sense. But and when you sort of break it down on a team level, there's like individual commitments and individual tasks that build into one team goal. So but you've got each other supporting you and helping you, and helping each other, and so there's definitely this different mindset, but ultimately everyone sort of focused around this sort of end goal about performing at their best.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Now, I want to get into the functionality and the things that you focus on as far as a company, but within your app. But I want to, before we get into that, this is a really broad question, and I don't even know if this is like a fair question, but I'm gonna throw it at you anyways. Since you are in the business of impacting and transforming and supporting elite athletes, what do you think in this day and age, as of right now, what do you think athletes are missing?
I think one of the biggest things is it's there's so many things that spring to mind.
Right.
I might need to do two here to just
All right.
I would say one of the biggest is that focus on the mental side. And I know that's super broad, but keeping it broad allows me to sort of span a couple angles here.
Right.
So, when we ask athletes, and we do this all the time, what percent of performance would you attribute to the mind? Everyone says somewhere between 50 and 90+%.
Yeah.
And that's the name of your podcast. So, it's such a big component of our performance is mindset, whether that's having the mindset to improve or whether that's having the mindset to perform in the moment. Like, it spans so many different angles, and people understand its importance. But despite that, the sort of follow-up to that is, okay, it's so important. What are you doing to focus on it? Like, what percent of your time are you focusing on it? And it's like 0 or close to 0 for most people. And it's like this big bridge between the importance it plays and the importance that is placed on it in our training and in our recovery and in our performance. And so having an appreciation of that and having the tools, and we've tried to, this is what we've really tried to build, having the tools to allow people to build that across training and recovery and monitoring and performance is really, I think, a key part of what we're trying to do to help athletes. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. And yeah, for sure, that's one of the biggest. The other aspect I'd say is often just, and there's, as you go up, there's support tiers that help with this, but for most athletes, like tying that context of where you're at and how you're feeling and what your body's telling you through its physiology to actual solutions, that link I think is often missing. So what I mean by that is, you wake up today and say you're in a bad, you're not feeling great, but yet you've got commitments in your day-to-day life to do. You might have to perform, you might have a race to train to compete in. You might have a training session with your team that you don't want to let down. Like, these stuff this happens every day. Like, we all have commitments pretty much every day to, especially, our target audience all have commitments to do every day. And ultimately, when we know we're in a bad state, and this is what a lot of the wearables tell you, some days, like, all right, you're in a bad state today. Great. I've got a ton to do today, or I've got a race to compete in. There's this kind of, you're left in the dark. So what we really try to do is use that context of where they're at to provide actionable solutions and empower athletes and empower people to get into a better state to perform. So yeah, that's the other aspect I'd say, is that link between context and solution.
Awesome. You know what I like about that? You're right. Like, as much as we loved whatever we want to, whatever the performance is, we have these milestones, we have these goals, we want to be successful. But there are days where you're like, I don't want to show up today, like, or I don't feel good. And you don't have to feel good to perform well. And a lot of times, like what I'm hearing you is like you have this solution that can help when they're not in the right state, or maybe they're not at 100%. Because a lot of times I see athletes when they feel like they're not 100%, whatever that means, whatever that looks like, then maybe I'm not going to do well today. Maybe I shouldn't, like, and all these negative things can show up. So I always like getting athletes going, okay, if you don't feel 100%, that's okay. It's all right. Where are you at? Are you 45%? Okay, let's work in with the 45% that you do have. Because a lot of athletes will focus on the energy that they don't have, and they forget about the energy they do have.
Yeah.
Like, you're not at zero unless you're tapping out and say, I can't even do anything today. Okay, there's probably something really wrong, but it sounds like that you have a solution within Rewire that can help athletes when they're not in the right state, that they can do certain things to maybe increase that energy level or that motivation or inspirational level.
For sure, yeah. We use a variety of strategies from psychology and neuroscience to really help improve someone's state.
Awesome.
And because we have that context, we're able to get really significant improvements in performance. So, you know, across a couple minutes of a session, some of our athletes are dropping stress on average by like 70%, which is just crazy. And we have the same across like really impactful results across improvements in readiness, improvements in focus, improvements in feelings of relaxation. So like really significant results. And that's because we know, we have the context of the state they're in. We know their readiness, we know their mental state, their physical state, their emotional state, and are able to provide solutions targeted to that. So we use guided breathing protocols, a range of different ones. We're using binaural beats. We're using self-talk, which we already touched on, using visualization, using subliminal priming, and just combining them and fine-tuning them to the state they're in and what they want to achieve, be that performance, be that productivity, be that recovery or rest. We're aiming to help them get into a better state to achieve what they want and empower them to do that rather than just leave them in the dark. So yeah, we think that link, like monitoring is nothing without a solution, and that sort of link between the two is just so powerful.
I agree.
Like I had speaking to a professional football player, and he was saying like, one day he just woke up and didn't feel good, but he had a game that day, and he needs to perform in that, and he just sat in the locker room before the game, did one of our recommended sessions based on his state, targeted to performance, and he was, he went out and had one of his best games just by being able to sort of optimize that mental aspect and also prime his body as well. We do a lot of strategies around sort of priming your physiology. So yeah, we see some really awesome results by just focusing on that. There's the controllables that we can really work on there. And I hear that story all the time, which is just so awesome considering like, our team is all athletes and it means a huge thing for us and obviously things we've gone through as well. So yeah.
Well, when you think about, I know on your website, it shares a lot of incredible athletes that are endorsing your product, that use your product, but who are some of the athletes that you can talk about that are using Rewire?
Yeah. So the awesome thing, another awesome thing about some of our athletes is they've been users of the product and loved it so much that they've wanted to become a part of the journey and invested as well. So Kyle Korver was one of those, NBA All-Star. We've also got a few professional football players from Europe. soccer for any American listeners, but for me, yeah, they're like Kyle, they're really enjoying it. We've got a few triathletes using it, professional triathletes, so Matt Hansen, who's also a one of our advisors, like Kyle is as well, and Ben Canute, Timothy O'Donnell. So a lot of athletes across team sports, across individual sports, and all finding a lot of benefit from it, which is so awesome.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, you started off from a holistic approach, inside out, working with the athlete. Now you're moving more towards teams as well. Like you're expanding. Is it fair to ask, like, what's next? Like, is there any other things, as you know, as a growing company? I know you guys are starting out and doing very well. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. You know, we think ultimately this mental fitness affects anyone that cares about performance, which is a lot of people, like pretty much the entire population. So
Right.
there's definitely like expansions beyond where we're at now in that capacity. We've got some really cool stuff in the pipeline as well. One big thing for us is growing we just want to provide solutions for all athletes. So the more tools we can provide around helping them improve their performance, the better. So a lot more tools coming out in that sense. And we're also trying to, you know, make it something that works within what they're doing already. So integration is a huge part of what we're doing. We're just releasing one with Garmin Connect for the next month, and that's gonna that's a huge thing for a lot of our user base. So very excited about that, and we'll be continuing to expand beyond our current integrations. We've got quite a few now already. So yeah, very exciting there. And then one really cool thing we've got in the pipeline as well, which I give a little teaser of. Obviously, some parts of our roadmap we like to keep close, but one part we've got coming out, which is really awesome, is our neuro buttons, and that essentially allows someone to train their mind whilst they're training their body. So we use a response inhibition task, called it's a Stroop task. And essentially it trains a part of your mind, your brain responsible for mental fatigue. And what we did is build some buttons that allow you to interact with that response inhibition task whilst you're training. So we built a system that combines with an indoor bike, a power meter, or a heart rate monitor if you're running, and allows you to be interacting with the game whilst you're at certain intervals that you can build. And the beauty is we can compare your physical and cognitive metrics that you've outputted during that session, and create some really nice analysis of sort of your mental resilience, essentially. So, you know, we built a metric called perception gap, which is really based around the difference between how hard you perceive it was, your RPE, and how hard or how intense the actual output was. And by doing that, we're able to get essentially a gap between how hard it felt and how hard it was. So that's a really cool measure of sort of resiliency, in the sense that we're able to compare that. And ultimately you want to get to the point where you're outputting more than it feels. So some really cool stuff there. So,
and is that, when that functionality comes to market, will that be in a part of the app as well, or will that be a different service? So it builds into the app, but it's essentially a hardware add-on that someone could buy, and it allows them to basically unlock that functionality within the app. We've also already got that neurotraining game or task in the app already, just as a software-only version, which is awesome. So really recommend you trying that out. We've got pre-workout sessions before like a low intensity workout.
We've got post workout sessions for after you've done a really high intensity or skills session where you want that mental focus. And then we've got some standalone sessions for maybe you want to put in on a rest day or something like that. So really encourage checking that out. Helps you build mental resilience, helps you build tolerance to mental fatigue, and is incredibly impactful. And it's something that's been researched, and we've had our system validated, cross-validated against that research. So very exciting results there.
Awesome. Well, one more question before we sign off. Because I'm really big in reflection. I think that's where we kind of gain our wisdom, whether for an athlete or an entrepreneur. So I always ask this question with all my guests. When you think about your whole career as an athlete, also now an entrepreneur, what do you think you've learned the most about yourself?
It kind of comes back to what I described as my mindset of challenging myself. It's not that, it's how far we can actually reach. So and I think most people would be surprised. And once you start to really challenge yourself, it's exciting. And that's probably it, like how far you can reach through hard work and through challenging yourself and through really resiliency as well, and just working. Yeah, that's the main thing I'd say.
You know what I love about it too, the more that you talk about challenging yourself, is competing. Man, it's like to compete is fun, and we don't know the outcome. We never do when we get into competition. That's where a lot of the reps and trusting the process and the training and all that. But I love to compete, man. Regardless, like if you just love competition and competing, I don't care if it's with yourself or other people. I don't know. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love like just in any capacity working with athletes or people that have done a lot of sport, because they love that competition, they love winning, they're of that sort of process mindset. They are just resilient people that love a challenge, and that's awesome. So yeah, I really love that about athletes and people that have done sport.
Yeah. Awesome. How do people find out more about Rewire, and how do they, if they want to connect with you, how do they connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. So find out more about Rewire. You can go to our website, rewirefitness.app. You can also download our athlete platform from the App Store. Just search Rewire Fitness. And you can check us out on social media. Instagram is at Rewire Fitness. You can find me on Twitter. I don't post much at all, so it's not very exciting, quite private in that capacity. But that's at Ed Gibbins if you wanna check me out there. And feel free to send me a message as well. I'm more than happy to chat. You can also join our Discord and chat to me there. I love those sort of private or group conversations. I'm not overly public, but yeah.
Awesome. Ed, thank you for sharing your journey, your mindset, and your awesome company. I encourage everyone to check out Rewire. They're doing things a little bit different. A lot of apps out there, a lot of great intentions out there in this space, but I think you guys are hitting it right. And so I encourage everyone to check out Rewire. And Ed, thanks for being on my show again. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, Grant. Really enjoyed it, and really appreciate you having me on and letting me share what we're doing.